Infinitely more real than hipster TV.
Let's go for it.
Yeah, okay. Do you want to use this or shall I?
Yeah, I'll grab that, right? This is Neil Cooper. I'm Peter Knox. This is 15 Minutes of Shame, and you're welcome to it. Neil, how do you do?
I'm alright, thank you, Peter. How do you do?
I'm good, thanks. You're the first returning guest on 15 Minutes of Shame.
I'm honoured.
He's honoured. Yeah, indeed you are. We must be doing something right. And I'm here to... Last time we were talking about the death of the arts, museums shutting down stuff.
Well, that's still going on.
Yeah, but there's also great things that are going on with this fantastic book, Hungry Beat, that you have written all by yourself.
No.
No help from anyone else.
No. The book is co-written by Douglas McIntyre of the Creep and Bent organisation, record label / events producers. Grant McPhee, the film director who directed a documentary called Big Gold Dream, which was all about the things that the book is about, which we can go into in a minute. And I'm very much the third wheel on this. I mean, a lot of Grant's interviews from the film were used in the book, and Douglas did new stuff and I did new stuff, and it was all kind of knitted together by Douglas. Really.
But you're the proper writer, you did the writing, eh?
No.
Or did you just do a line each and pass it
Yeah,
on
just
to each other?
No, it was like that. It was all done. No, I mean Douglas is the one who's knitted it together.
Right.
I mean,
okay.
all I did really was some new interviews and a couple of other things. And yes, it was Douglas and Douglas who did the donkey work. Really.
Good old Douglas.
Donkey work. That makes it sound like a chore, but it was a labour of love.
I'm just a sec. Paranoid. Sorry.
Okay.
So, how did you? If theatre critic's one of your main job titles, isn't it?
Not so much these days.
No.
Not so much since the pandemic.
Right.
But because that kind of changed things, because the Herald newspaper, which was my kind of bread and butter, doesn't really have an arts page anymore.
Right. Okay.
So that kind of ended.
So, one of the things I see most of you do is writing obituaries for like people in the arts generally.
Yeah.
And a lot of them seem to be awfully young, the ones I've read recently. There was an actor who was 60, Robbie Coltrane who's 72, that's quite young. So when you're writing an obituary, is it quite, do you need to know the person already, or do you have to, sometimes, does it depend?
It depends. I mean, there's things I've done obituary-wise of people I've known, and then that's different because there's an emotional tie there, and you can speak to people directly. I think the actor you're thinking of is Grant Smeaton.
Yes,
and I didn't know Grant, but I knew his work, so there was an in there, and I knew a lot of people I could talk to. And there's a playwright, Alan Wilkins, who very sadly passed away, aged 53, I think it was. Again, you can speak to people. I knew him a little bit, but then there's people who you don't know at all. I mean, one of the most interesting things about doing the obituaries is the research. There's been photographers and film directors who have been asked to do stuff on and you haven't known the work at all. But then you go down these kind of rabbit holes, and it's like, oh right, they're really, really interesting, and it's fascinating. And then there's the kind of more celebrity-based ones, I guess, where there's millions and millions of stuff out there to gather up. It's just a question of research, really. I mean, one of the things about doing obituaries is it's really taught me how to research.
Yeah, is it quite an art to it then?
Well, it's different every time.
Because anyone can do research and get a load of facts, and you all seem to get a bit of human interest then.
Yeah.
Like last one I saw someone that punched someone or something like that. been punched.
Yeah, there was something like that. Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's it's kind of getting the balance between the historically factual and the anecdotal, and just to kind of bring a bit of colour into things, and like rather than it just being a kind of regurgitation of someone's CV. Yes, it's important to have that and to do it in the right order, but you also need to try and get over a bit about who the person was.
Yeah, and you must feel when you're bringing one of those things to close, they're like kind of close to that person.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Well, yeah.
I mean, question.
No, I mean it is. I mean, the obituaries for me kind of started about 20 years ago when John McGrath, the theatre director and writer, died, and it was when the Herald had a lot more resources, and I got a phone call early in the morning, and the editor wanted me to do it because they were very much into one person, one art form, and that was really before I certainly was au fait with the internet research engines and all the rest of it. So you're kind of scrambling around, sort of blah blah blah, like okay, knitting stuff together, and then gradually, I mean, the second one I did after that was a friend of mine, and that was really strange. But then gradually you learn how to do it in a kind of proper order. There's no sort of one way. Everyone does it differently. There's kind of personal tributes to which people do to people they know, which is different again, I think. But yeah, it's quite a strange thing to do, but there's a real responsibility to it. I think because you kind of take a leap in a way to, it's like, okay, you're basically doing a eulogy, really, on the page, and like sort of, and you have to take that very seriously.
And I guess there's a good chance that some of the person who's died, close family are going to be reading their eulogy,
and so that again, and sometimes, again, it depends. You're in conversation with members of the family when you're putting stuff together, and that's not always easy for them as much as you doing it. But yes.
And another thing that must be difficult for you, if you're especially more as a theatre critic, reviewing things that there's a good chance you're going to come into contact with people that have been in it or have written it and things like that. Is it difficult to sometimes be honest if you thought something's not been very good?
Yeah, sometimes, because I mean Scotland and Edinburgh is a tiny little world. And everyone knows everyone in some respects. And so you kind of have to keep your distance, and you have to be honest as well. I mean, because in some respects, it's easier to slag off a French mine troupe who are here for 3 nights in August, rather than 3 weeks in August, than it is to someone who's here all year round. But as long as it's constructive, it doesn't really matter. I think,
do you ever feel you've been given the cold shoulder by someone that...
Once or twice. Yeah. I mean, once or twice. It depends. I mean, some people are sensitive about those things, but it's important for you as well not to ingratiate yourself too much in that world, or I don't know. Again, there's no black and white to it. It's just but you can't help in some ways because there are a lot of good people who you're writing about a lot of the time, and you want them to do well, and you end up being part of the same. Well, you are a part of the same world in a way, a different part of it, and it depends. Some people don't like it, some people are fine with it.
The thing is, if it's like say an actor that's working predominantly in Scotland, there's a good chance they're going to be doing something every year or every few years, and there's a good chance one of them's not going to be great, and you're going to need to be honest about that.
Well, what you have to do with that, I mean, I think what you're saying, certainly in my younger years, there was kind of more kind of knee-jerky reactions that maybe over-personalise things. But what you have to remember is that it's not a one-man or a one-person show, that it's a bigger whole, and where people have been working on it for weeks or months, and you know, if something has gone wrong, you can't put that on one person. You know, I mean, of course there are weak links and there are strengths. Some people are going to stand out more than others, but quite often, it sounds like a stupid thing to say, but quite often it's nobody's fault. These things just kind of happen. You know, there are circumstances which have contributed to that, which you can't really see. So, you know, what to do.
So you're not so much a theatre critic now. When you started out in writing, did you have a goal? Did you want to be? What did you want to be, and how did you end up here?
I don't know. I mean, it was something that I'd always done, I guess, from a very, very young age, and it was always, you know, it wasn't really fiction, I don't think. I mean, yeah, you'd write stories or whatever, but it was always, I suppose, being weaned on the music press in the late 70s and early 1980s.
It was a great time for it.
That was, it's like, oh my God, what are they on about? Or it's like, who are they talking about? And you know, and that work was when that form of criticism was very barbed and very subjective, and it was very much about the personality of the writer and that sort of thing. So, I mean, I suppose, I mean, that opened up worlds in terms of some of the references they used, that you go, you know, not just music. You know, I mean, that was, I mean, partly the book, Hungry Beat, is about that generation of people who came of age, who were interested in ideas through music, through which led you down rabbit holes towards art, to music, to theatre, to film, to all these things, and to politics, to ideas, really, and how they all connected up, and how really they change things. You know, I mean, Hungry Beats, which is, we should say, the subtitle was Scottish Independent Pop Underground Movement 1977 to 1984. That is, you know, it's a tale of two cities in a way, Glasgow and Edinburgh. Glasgow Postcard Records of Scotland, run by Alan Hall and Edwin Collins. Edinburgh Fast Product Records, run by Bob Last and Hilary Morrison. And they were all about ideas and ambition and subverting the mainstream and trying to get beyond, I mean, a lot of the bands from working class backgrounds, not being ashamed to be clever and coming out of you know, schemes in not Corstorphine, but the one next to it, what's it called?
Don't know, the posh areas like
but you know, and coming out of bits that weren't cool, you know, in cities at a time when these cities were depressed and everyone was on the dole, and turning that into a creative thing and making things happen, whether that's gigs or records or events, fanzines, all of that. I mean, you know, I come out with fanzine culture as well. You know, it's like, and just thinking, well, the punky thing of, well, I can do that.
Right.
You know, it's a DIY thing.
Was that got you started sort of punky, because I want to write so right?
I guess,
See where it can end up.
Yeah,
I mean, from a working class background.
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, I went to an all boys comprehensive, and I was quite good at English, I guess. But then, you know, once you get into the music and you read the papers, which are all full of highfalutin ideas about, you know, Roland Barthes or Adorno or things like that, and then, you know, or kind of subtitled films and things like that, but then you've got what's happening in New York with the whole no wave thing, and you know, and what's going on with rough trade and that kind of DIY-ness, you know, and it's like, so it all
Did you latch on to all that stuff at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I was just that little bit, a couple of years too young to be in the thick of it in the way that Douglas was.
But a spring chicken.
Yeah, well, you know, but as a teenager, you know, you could still go into Code Records, which is the record shop, the independent record shop in Liverpool, and you know, that was where you bought the records that you read about in the NME, and you know, and while at the same time, Pete Burns or Pete Wiley would be behind the counter.
What's the name of the fella that ran through?
Jeff Davis.
Yeah, I met him briefly at a Half Man Half Biscuit concert up here.
Of course he did.
He was selling merch. Quite a character.
Yeah, I mean, he was behind the counter and that. I spoke to Jeff on the phone once trying to get an interview with Half Man Half Biscuit, oddly enough.
Impossible.
And he's like, you what? Oh no, Nigel's gone walking this weekend. I'll give you the number for his sister. And it's like, no. And but all those little pockets of independent activity with Probe and Zoo Records in Liverpool, with Factory in Manchester, with Postcard in Glasgow, with Fast in Edinburgh, that was just opening up, and of course Rough Trade in London, and others, I probably missed some out. That was just opening everything up to this kind of...
Was there a Birmingham label?
Oh, there was, I'm sure. There must have been. There was a label called 021, but I'm not sure how much they did. I think they did an Opus single. And
just ask
more.
because you put on gigs these days as well.
Yeah.
And you had the Nightingales in town last week.
Yes.
Which unfortunately I couldn't make it. First of their gigs in many years I couldn't go to. I seem to play Edinburgh at least once a year these days. Well, is that all down to you?
Well, not just me. No, it was me and Colin Duff. I mean, Colin Duff again. He does the practical stuff, because this all began about 10 years ago. When someone you probably know called Bob Kearns, who's no longer in Edinburgh, we got wind that the Nightingales had reformed. So we thought, let's track him down, let's put them on. And we managed to get Robert Lloyd, the singer's, email address from somewhere. And we just got, after about 2 weeks, we just got this long line email back in lowercase, just saying, nobody's interested. So it was like, and that was it. But then about 2 years on, they played CD Boots, and whatever had happened, the promoter had done a runner, and they ended up playing to about 10 people. So I wrote a thing in the List magazine about it, and sent it to Robert, and said, if you ever need an audience, come back and we'll get you an audience. And then about another year later, I got an email off Robert, and saying, do you know anyone in Edinburgh who might want to put us on? And so I asked around, and nobody did. So I thought, I'm going to have to do this myself, aren't I? So I spoke to Murray Ramone, and from Shock and Awe.
Right, yeah.
And he had an inn at Citrus, and so they came to Citrus twice. And I wasn't going to do a third one, but somewhere along the way Colin had got involved, and I had a meeting with Colin and Liz Tainch, who's also involved. I mean, she's a photographer, and because the third one, I'd said to them, I said, look, I can't do it again, you'll have to get someone else. So Liz had got in touch with Nightingale and said, why are you doing Edinburgh? No one's going to put us on. It was so that's how Colin got involved, and then I got involved with them, and then it continued, and we did 2 at Leeds Depot, 1 in the Voodoo Room's little room, 1 in Legends, and then the last 2 at the Caves.
There must have been more than 1 in the Voodoo Room.
Oh no, there was supposed to be another one, but it double booked.
Oh really?
Yeah. And it was a double header with Vic Goddard and the Subway Set.
Yeah.
They
played the rooms more regularly.
No. It was just the one. And
This
like,
isn't interesting for people when it's people go, oh no, I thought it was.
but it's been a really interesting trajectory because during that period, they put out a lot of new records and old ones. They've had a lot of champions. Stuart Lee and Michael made a film called King Rocker, which is like magnificent. And like so, suddenly there's sort of
Cummings.
Michael Cummings, that's it, yes. And like so suddenly they're on Sky Arts, and it's like, oh right, you know, that little band who were playing to, well, that old band who couldn't get arrested and they were playing to 10 people, now there's a film about them. So we've just carried on, and it's great. And it was particularly thrilling the week because they had a mini horn section and strings, and it was like, well, let's just put it this way.
Terry Edwards.
Terry Edwards on sax and trumpet.
Who, if you don't know, if you basically have heard any sort of brass instruments on a modern pop, rock, alternative album, he's been involved with it, hasn't he? Like Nick Cave and
PJ Harvey.
Yeah, the list just goes pretty much everyone, isn't it?
And he played in a band with Mark Bedford from Magnus called the Near Jazz Experience that they have going, and they supported him when we put them on, supported the Nightingales when we put them on in Legends, stroke Opium as was there. And so Terry Edwards has obviously got that relationship, but there was two women, the Nightingales, as they were dubbed, Natalie Mason and Beth Tompkins. Beth played sax and guitar, and I think clarinet as well. And Natalie played viola and keyboards and accordion. And the sound was remarkable having those extra three. Put it this way, there was a lot of conversation upstairs about Henry Cow. You don't know what I'm on about, do you? We could be here all day, but Henry Cow were a kind of English intellectual prog band in the 1970s, and they had a lot of atonal bassoons and things like that.
Last time I saw Nightingales, they gave you a big thank you at the end. You got a massive thank you. And time before that, it wasn't in the Caves. It was one of those Cowgate venues, not Sneaky Pete's.
Opium?
It must have been Opium. And who was the support act then? It was like some...
The Near Jazz Experience with Paul Vickers in the middle.
Right,
he did a little 10-minute comedy thing, because one of the things I love about the Nightingales is they always have interesting supports. Whether it's the Near Jazz Experience or this time, yes, they've had Ted Chippington, and when Phil Jupiter's was there the other night, they seem to have this connection. So I always like to think of them as a little bit alternative showbiz. And like, so it's always nice to try and mix it up. And like, so that's why we got Paul on to do that. And last time they had the Blue Orchids and they had Camera Obscura, and it's like, it's really, and yet they always try and mix it up, and it's great. And if they want us to bring someone locally, and we will, that's not always the case because of time and other things. But for that one, 10 minutes of Paul, I thought would go down really well.
Got a bit of beef with Phil Jupitus, but this isn't really the time and the place to bring it up. But yeah, I've had nice chats with all the Nightingales at some points. Apart from Robert, I'm too scared to talk to him. I'm sure he's a nice fella, but he's like...
He looks grumpier than he is.
Yeah.
He's really nice. He's lovely. He's lovely. I mean, they're all lovely.
You don't want to pester people.
No,
they are lovely, especially Andy the guitarist.
Andy the bassist.
Andy's the bassist. Who's the guitarist?
Jim.
Jim. He's one of the most lovely people I've ever met in my life. He was like trying to go out of his way to like help my band to fucking reach. He's like, oh, maybe we can do this for you. And I wasn't like pushing it or anything. He was just like really inquisitive, friendly, lovely, giving you a big cuddle sort of fella.
Jim's lovely. I mean, he came in, I think, when was it, about 2016 or something, because I think, was it Alan Ackley he'd been the original guitarist going way back.
Right.
He'd been back playing with them, and then he went off, and they got Jim in. So there's just, I mean, it's just kind of this network that Robert and the others, and Fliss, the drummer, let's not forget her, who's kind of one of the driving forces between giving them the band the profile that they've got now. And
a lot of legwork.
Yeah, and she's the one who keeps us in shape. If we're putting her on, it's like, come on, promote it.
Oh,
Like,
really?
yeah. And which one time prompted me to write a lengthy email trying to explain the strange psychology of gig going in Edinburgh, which is probably a little bit different to most places. In that people, because of the August thing, people don't really, there's that to take into account, and people don't plan in a way that they might. It's different from Glasgow.
But I think the Nightingales have just got this now faithful crowd that will always be turning up.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's people who come every time.
Yeah.
And that's great. And there's people who travel as well, I think.
Yeah.
And it's never, because Edinburgh is a bit strange in that way, it's never gonna fill the Usher Hall.
Well, this time I just couldn't make it, but last time I'd had 3 gigs that were all postponed because of COVID, and then ended up all happening on the same night. I can't remember what the third one was, but I ended up having to choose between the Nightingales in Edinburgh or going to Glasgow to see Jarvis. So
Tricky.
I thought, well, the Nightingales are local, Jarvis won't miss me.
Yeah, well.
So I went, and I was so glad I did.
I think you made the right choice. No disrespect to Jarvis.
No, of
but,
course.
It's you've got to take it where you can. And so it's like, it's such a shame you missed the kind of horn and strings thing, because that's probably not going to happen again until someone offers them £1 million to do it again. Because it was magnificent. And it was such a thrill, because it was like, oh, right, okay. I mean, they've always been good. You know what they're like. They play and they don't have a break.
Incredible. I think Captain Beefheart's the thing I think of the most. The way they just... I don't know how they do it. How the hell do they do it?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
physically, just playing all these mad, discordant things up against each other, but it always just works and it's seamless.
I mean, it's remarkable. And and Andy, the bass player, he lives in Germany, and and they all live in. Well, I'm not entirely sure, but somewhere in the Midlands. So it's not an easy thing to navigate. And then bringing in Terry Edwards and Natalie and Beth, it's like, but it's rehearsed incredibly tight, and and they just do it. And Robert is so concentrated on it.
Yeah, he's an absolute legend.
Yes, absolutely.
Should we pause this and come back for a bit more Hungry Beat?
Yeah, I thought that's what we were going to talk about.
Yeah, sorry, I got distracted. But you're an interesting fella, Neil, and there's a lot of things I want to chat to you about.
Fair enough.